Okay, this video is from quotes from the Holy Grail of Wisdom, quotes by me, Pete Rogers. We're on the letter F. We're going in alphabetical order. The first person we're going to talk about is Arnold Friberg. I also ran a video tonight of him about his art. He's a great art, one of the greatest artists ever from the United States. This is a painting of his of GW, praying at Valley Forge. And so don't ever forget, this country was founded by Christians, okay? It is based on a Christian worldview. The original Constitution is based on a Christian worldview. Without that, it doesn't work, okay? If you don't have Christian ethics, what you have is chaos, and what you then have is rule by force, okay? And that's what we're being pushed into now, and hopefully will sort of restore free speech in this country. Hope so. So GW, he didn't have to do it. He could have just been a rich farmer. He wanted freedom. So did Thomas Jefferson. So did Ben Franklin. So did the other founding fathers, John Adams, Samuel Adams, okay? These are the guys that made it happen. The greatest founding fathers from any country in the history of the world. And that's widely acclaimed. It's not just my opinion. Read Ayn Rand if you want to read somebody who has a good historical perspective, okay? The alternative between this place. There's not many places in the world where freedom has existed and men could do whatever they thought was best intellectually that didn't bother others. Ancient Greece, Athens, little points, moments there, here and there in Rome, the Italian Renaissance, little points here and there in other countries, but the world's much less free than people think, People that have really studied history, that most places are sort of brutal dictatorships. Okay, so prayer at Valley Forge. Now here's Arnold Friberg. He lived from 1913 to 2010. Here's a couple quotes by him. Art is always better when serving a cause greater than itself. Yeah, Christianity says we are created in the image of God, therefore we can be creators like God, okay? And we honor him with our creations, especially the Catholic Church does that. But, it's a glory to make art that glorifies God. And the best art is usually religious. Not always, but usually. The best music is Christian music, okay? The Christians are the best at anything cultural and aesthetic. They created civilization. When you say civilization, what you're really saying is Christian civilization, okay? There's a little bit more to it than Christian, but that's most of it, okay? To have a real free civilization where people are welcome, not just one culture, but where people from a wide variety of cultures are welcome, Christianity, capitalism, and the Constitution. And the Constitution only works with Christian ethics. That's just reality. Okay, and they produce magnificent art. 99% of the good art in the world has been produced by Christians. All this multiculturalism stuff is BS. The other cultures, where's their art? Okay, some of them got a little bit of music here and there, but nothing like the Christian tradition. Look at a little tiny country of Ireland, a little tiny little place being forced into Jenna, side. That little tiny place has produced so much magnificent music, it's not even funny. Okay, anyways, Arnold Friberg continues. All you leave the world is what you've done. No one will ever know the conditions, the comments, the pressures. Only the work remains. What I do, I am driven to do. I follow the dictates of a looming and unseen force. I try to become like a musical instrument, making no sound of its own, but bringing forth such tones as are played upon it by the master's hand. So that's pretty typical. Michelangelo said, I do everything for the glory of God. I put all my faith, hope, and trust in God. Okay, the greatest artists, that's what they do. I never seen anybody worth a shit who said I meditated, okay? Give me a break. The reason meditation is popular is because it's mediocre, because it's BS, because it's a way to pacify the multitude, because it's not offensive to anybody. But it's BS. I never saw anybody great who said, I meditated and became great. Yeah, right. You hear this over and over again. Johann Kepler, the great astronomer. I'm trying to follow in the thoughts of Christ, okay? Isaac Newton. I put, everything comes to me as a gift from Christ, all my thoughts. That's typical. Johann Sebastian Bach. Everything to the glory of God. I was made to work to glorify God. I mean, there it is. You want to see great achievements, that's where you'll find them. Go ahead, study the history of science, study the history of music, study the history of painting, study the history of sculpture. It's the same thing over and over and over, okay? And where did it initially come from? From ancient Greece, okay? All right, let's see. What else does Friberg say? He says, the muscularity of my paintings is only an expression of the spirit within, meaning the characters who had this magnificent spirit. And of course, it's similar to Michelangelo. Okay, Arnold Friberg, American painter. That painting, by the way, its official name was Prayer at Valley Forge. He also made all the Ten Commandments paintings for Cecil B. DeMille's Ten Commandments movie with Charlton Heston, which was magnificent. In the past, when you had a Christian Hollywood, you've got these magnificent movies like, Ben-Hur, Ten Commandments, all this great stuff. And nowadays, what do you got in Hollywood? You got P. Diddy having freakouts and all the other nonsense. That's what you get when you have an atheistic Hollywood, okay? You have people like Ellen DeGenerate and Adreno, you know what, that coloration thing, Chrome, okay? That's what you get when you have an atheistic place, okay? All right. You know, back in the old days when I was growing up, I watched Father Knows Best. We watched Boys Town, you know, The Bells of St. Mary's, all this type of stuff. Okay, Milton Friedman, they're both, you know, in order of their names here. Milton Friedman lived from 1912 to 2006. He was an economics professor at the University of Chicago. He won the Nobel Prize. He was a brilliant guy. And he was a big fan of, guess what? If you care about economics, you know anything about economics, what's best for a whole country, it's capitalism, of course. Because in capitalism, whenever you make a deal, you benefit each other. So here's just some of his quotes. A society that puts equality before freedom will get neither. A society that puts freedom before equality will get a high degree of both. Everybody will have opportunity. The world runs on individuals pursuing their self-interests. The great achievements of civilization have not come from bureaucracies. Columbus did not seek a new route to the Indies in response to a majority directive. Okay, and you can hear his words. They basically, you know, Ayn Rand could have written that, okay? His thinking is very much like Ayn Rand, and they were both from the same, you know, time era, and they both, you know, told the truth, okay? You cannot be sure that you are right unless you understand the arguments against your views better than your opponents do. The only corporate social responsibility a company has is to maximize its profits. Yeah, a lot of companies, they pretend to be ethical. BS. Corporations only care about money. And then the other thing you have nowadays is you have these monopolies. And monopolies are even worse because monopolies then become political. And they use their political power usually to do something evil, okay? They don't do it to do something nice. They pretend to be nice. Most of the time, they're part of something evil. A lot of times, they're part of, you know, the gas, you know what, lighting on the public. Or they're trying to push a meme onto the public that degrades the public. They're not like some friend. And once they get real big, they've got to control their market, so they don't have to worry about meritocracy. They don't have to worry about excellence or quality. They've got everything, you know, control of that market. So then they start doing all kinds of bad things. Unfairness in hiring, a lot of bad stuff. Abusive employees, lots of bad stuff. I'm not going to go into all that right now, but I'm just telling you, you want meritocracy. You want, you know, the 3 C's, capitalism, Christian ethics, and a constitution. That gives you a free society. Everybody's got a chance, and nobody's going to mess with you for no reason. Whereas, you know, in the modern society, there's all this censorship, all this surveillance, all this cancel culture, all these speech codes, all this political correctness, all this centralization of power. And the purpose of all that stuff is to bring back slavery. And the American public is too stupid to realize it. But that's what it's all for. It's all pushing towards centralization of power to bring back slavery. Okay, because the really rich people who control the world, they hate Christianity because it says all men are created equal to God and that you should be nice to the proles, the least of my brethren. Okay, they want a total control from above by rich people, and they think the regular public should just be a bunch of slaves. You know, if you got a pretty daughter, they want her as their sex slave in their bed. That's what it's about. This is not like my idea. This has been in writing for decades. It's just that, you know, vast majority, 95% of Americans, they don't read history. They don't know anything. You know, they go through life like little children, and then they wonder why do things keep getting worse? Maybe it's because the public is so ignorant, okay? All right, a little bit more from Milton Friedman. Okay, he says, one of the great mistakes is to judge policies and programs by their intentions rather than their results. To be a free man, the country is a collection of individuals who compose it. It is not something over and above them. Underlying most arguments against the free market is a lack of belief in freedom itself. The economic miracle that has been the USA was not produced by socialized enterprises or central planning. It was produced by private enterprises in a profit and loss system. History suggests that capitalism is necessary, a necessary condition for freedom. Yeah, Ayn Rand will tell you the same thing. Capitalism is the unknown ideal. It's the only thing that works, laissez-faire capitalism. And if you study it, it totally makes sense. Read Ayn Rand's book, Atlas Shrugged. Listen to her videos. Listen to her book, The Return of the Primitive. That's a good one, okay? Fountainhead, that's real good stuff too. Clearly, capitalism alone is not sufficient. Yeah, you also need Christian ethics, and you also need a constitution. You need those things. Guaranteed free speech, right to property. In other countries, somebody invents something, the ruler just takes it away from them. Somebody says, and a new idea is always going to challenge political correctness and conformity because it's something new. And therefore, it's not allowed in most places. And that's why most places stink at innovation. Most countries have done hardly any useful science and have hardly innovated on anything, okay? They're not all equal. Most countries are really kind of pathetic in terms of their achievements. Study their achievements. Put them up in a scale and compare them, okay? And you will see Christian countries have achieved far more. Don't take my word for it. Study it. You'll see. Okay, he continues. There is no possibility of having a free society unless the major part of its economic resources are operated on a capitalism, private enterprise system, so that the record of history is absolutely crystal clear. There is no alternative. No alternative so far has been discovered of improving the lot of ordinary people that can hold a candle to the productive activities that are unleashed by a free enterprise system. The most important single central fact about a free market is that no exchange takes place unless both parties benefit. And the way you can think of it is, imagine you own a restaurant. If you own a restaurant in capitalism, you want to try to do a good job. Make good food for the customers, provide good service, a good experience for them. If you do a good job, you make more profits, you can hire more people, you can build another restaurant, make even more money. That's capitalism. You have a chance to improve and to win, and meritocracy rises to the top. And here's socialism or communism, okay? Central planner gives you whatever it is. You get $100,000 for the month to run your restaurant. Well, the less you do, the more of that money you get to keep. So all of a sudden in these communist countries, you'll see a sign on the door of the restaurant, out for lunch, be back in 50 minutes. No one's there from noon to 4 o'clock, okay? The less service they provide, the worse the food, the more the money they keep. So they gain money to keep for themselves by giving less service to the customers. And that's why everything goes to crap. I know a lot of people that grew in communist countries. They would tell me all day long, in order to survive, you have to lie. You have to constantly keep lying all day long. You go to the store, there's nothing on the shelf. And so you have to ask the person at the checkout, well, I've got cash. Could you maybe see if you got some bread in the back? They go, oh, let me check. And they go back, oh, yeah, we got some bread. You pay cash for it, okay? That's how it is. Okay, let's see. Milton Friedman, he continues. Okay, one last quote by Milton Friedman. He says, "The great threat to freedom is the concentration of power. Freedom means the absence of coercion of man by his fellow man. The fundamental threat to freedom is the power to coerce, be it in the hands of a monarch, a dictator, an oligarchy, or a momentary majority." Yeah, and that's why you don't want centralization of power. That's why the founding fathers put in all these checks and balances to prevent that sort of thing. Okay, because you give too much power to any man, they're going to abuse it. Okay, look at the Roman emperors. That's why you got to study Rome if you want to know anything about history. They would insist on having a different woman in their bed every day, a different concubine in their bed every day. That's it. If they thought a woman was pretty and they couldn't just immediately tell her to come into my bed, they would send a bunch of soldiers and they would just kill the family. It's called a pearl hunt. Kill the family and take the girl, make her into a sex slave. That's it. Okay, Nero would do that. All right. That's what it's like in a country with total power given to an individual ruler. You don't want that. Look at Henry VIII, 8 wives. Okay, that's what you get when you give an individual total power. Don't get me wrong. You might have some better ones. They'll come across once in a while, but you get a lot of bad ones too. Okay, and eventually you mostly get bad ones because they're drawn to that sort of thing. Why work when you can abuse the system? Okay, you end up with just a bunch of looters running the place. Okay. And we were close to that in the not too distant past. Okay, let's see. Milton Friedman finishing up here, he says, "The preservation of freedom requires the elimination of such a concentration of power to the fullest possible extent and the dispersal and distribution of whatever power cannot be eliminated through a system of checks and balances." Yeah, it's pretty obvious and it's pretty correct. So anyways, I hope that was helpful.